The United States government shutdown of 2025, the longest in American history, officially came to an end on November 12th. After 43 grueling days of political deadlock, disruption, and uncertainty, federal operations began to restart. But what led to this historic shutdown? What was at stake during this standoff? And what does its resolution mean for the future of American governance and global geopolitical stability? On October 1st, 2025, the U.S. federal government ground to a halt. Congress had failed to pass the annual appropriations bills to fund government operations for the fiscal year, and a political impasse between the Republican-controlled House, the Democratic-led Senate, and President Donald Trump sparked what would become a 43-day stalemate. The shutdown eclipsed the previous record of 35 days set during President Trump's first term in 2019 to 2020. The core of the crisis lay in stark disagreements over budget priorities and ideological battles. Republicans contended they had done their part by passing a continuing resolution to fund the government temporarily, yet demanded deep cuts in social programs and restrictions on immigration policies. Democrats insisted on preserving funding for health care subsidies and food assistance programs, especially amid rising inflation and an ongoing cost of living crisis impacting millions of Americans. During the shutdown, over 1.4 million federal employees faced furloughs or forced to work without pay, straining families and communities nationwide. Vital services slowed or ceased entirely, from national parks to public health agencies to food assistance programs like SNAP, which at one point paused benefits for millions. Economists estimated the shutdown cost the U.S. economy roughly $15 billion per week, with ripple effects slowing economic growth, reducing consumer spending during the critical holiday season, and shaking investor confidence amid global geopolitical uncertainty. National security and defense workers face their own crises, with the military initially at risk of missing paychecks until emergency donor funding intervened. Border protection and customs operations operated in a legal gray zone, while veterans benefits processing halted, escalating public outcry. Behind the scenes, a bipartisan coalition of senators brokered a deal after weeks of negotiations. Senators Jeanne Shaheen, Maggie Hassan, Angus King, and others played critical roles in bridging GOP and Democratic divides. Their compromise included extending funding for agriculture, veterans affairs, and congressional operations for a full year, while other government agencies received a short-term extension through January 30th, 2026. The Senate's 60-40 vote on November 9th marked a pivotal shift, overcoming long-standing filibuster threats and partisanship. Yet the House of Representatives, more narrowly divided and controlled by a fractious Republican majority, presented a tougher hurdle. House Speaker Mike Johnson initially maintained that the House had done its job months earlier, slowing legislative activity and canceling committee hearings in protest of Democratic opposition. Yet mounting pressure from federal workers, constituents, and economic consequences compelled a return to Washington After nearly 2 months of recess, on November 12th, the House finally passed the Senate-advocated spending package in a narrow 222 to 209 vote. While Republicans largely opposed the bill, citing concerns over government spending and policy provisions, several Democrats joined Republicans to break the deadlock. That same evening, President Donald Trump signed the bill into law, formally ending the shutdown. The signing came less than 2 hours after the House vote, a symbolic gesture emphasizing the urgency to restore government function. The resolution marks a bittersweet victory. While urgent government services resume, the political wounds remain. Many federal workers suffer backlogged paychecks. Families affected by delayed benefits must rebuild, and hard questions linger about the capacity of America's political system to govern effectively in an era of intense polarization. Political analysts warn this shutdown reflects deep systemic dysfunction, from legislative gridlock to partisan brinkmanship, with long-term consequences for trust in democratic institutions. For President Trump and congressional leaders, the shutdown both reflects and exacerbates polarized public opinion on governance and policy priorities. Internationally, America's prolonged political paralysis sends mixed signals to allies and adversaries alike. For decades, the United States' ability to govern effectively has underpinned its leadership role in global security, economics, and diplomacy. The shutdown's disruption risks weakening that credibility amidst rapidly evolving geopolitical dynamics. From China's rise to international security challenges and economic volatility, the shutdown also energized calls among the American public, especially younger generations, for political reform. Addressing campaign financing, filibuster rules, and electoral processes to reduce partisan deadlock and better reflect the will of the people. Ultimately, the end of the shutdown begins a slow process of recovery, one that requires ongoing negotiation, compromise, and renewed commitment to serve the American people.